All right, welcome everybody. Those hardy souls that have shown up. We are within striking distance of the end of this course, but there's lots to do. So don't take your eye off the prize at this point. Got to get through this. Just to let you know, we have a webinar today. Hugh will be talking about an assignment that we'll be posting up, and it'll be there by the time the webinar is over with, and a discussion. And then we'll have another kind of a wrap-up webinar. Hugh will have to decide when that'll be, sometime this week. And then after that wrap-up webinar, we will officially end the course on time on Friday. But then there'll be a 2-week period that will give you to finish up. Actually, did I say end up on Friday? No, I'm sorry. I meant to say a week from Friday. Sorry.
Right. Okay.
Kind of. He was over there. He was over there in Germany sweating bullets. What the hell is he talking about? No. So there'll be another webinar probably early next week, and a discussion and assignment, and then everything will wrap up by a week from Friday, November 30th. But then we'll give you an additional week to finish up your assignments. And this is the period I want to really emphasize to you that are here, that if you're experiencing problems in using this very powerful software, this is where Hugh and Andrew should be called in to assist you. Everybody should be leaving the course with a very strong understanding of how to use the software. As we told you in the very beginning, you probably don't remember reading this, but one of the things that we offer with this course is to be there as you start setting up your own MIS and you start going forward to use this within your organization, to hold your hand and make sure that things will work the way they're supposed to work, and that all the functionality that you learned within the course you have access to. There will also be kind of a post discussion that Hugh will facilitate about how your organization can get the software to be able to use it for the full capabilities within your organization for all your MIS needs. That's a later discussion post-course, but Hugh will work with you on that. But in the meantime, we still have a lot to do. For those of you who just came on, we had 2 or 3 people came on a little late. After today's webinar, we're going to have an assignment. We're going to have a discussion, and then a final webinar next week. And then a week or so later, we're going to have a graduation webinar. You will have 2 weeks from this coming Friday to finish up all your homework. You need a 65% grade in order to be considered passing and be able to get the Certificate of Achievement from SMDP. So I just want to make that clear. The other thing is we will be working with you to get some important paperwork done. I've mentioned this before, but I want to mention again that all of the MasterCard scholarship folks will have a MasterCard evaluation to complete. Everyone in the course will be completing a post-assessment. You did a pre-assessment when you came in the beginning of the course, and then you'll gauge what you've learned in the post-assessment, and then there'll be a final evaluation of the course that Hugh and I will send to you. This is a pilot. It's the first time we've run this course online, even though we've done it dozens of times face-to-face. It's obviously quite different online, and so we want to make sure that we get good feedback from you as to what worked and what didn't. Everything from the assignments and the sequencing to the platform itself and connectivity, all that kind of stuff. That feedback will be really valuable for us. We'll give you a couple of weeks to get that in after the end of the course, but before Christmas, we definitely will want that. So, okay, that was mostly what I need to say, and that's given us a chance to get a few more people. I'd like to do is start with John Baptiste and just go around. If you want to turn on your cameras for just a minute, and we'll say a quick hello. Just say hello and how are you doing today? John Baptiste.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, how are you?
Very good. You have a friend with you today?
I'm with Daniel here, but we are having network problem.
Oh, you are? Okay.
This is Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel. So are you listening? Are you listening through some earbuds?
No, we are getting you clearly.
Oh,
No
you
problem.
are? Good. Oh, you're getting over the
Yes.
speaker. Okay, because I saw the headphones on John Baptiste. So great. Glad you guys are together.
No, we removed.
Good to see you.
Yes.
You're looking good.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome. And how about Cesar? How are you, Cesar? Good to see you. There's his big smile. We can't hear you, but we can see you. Yes, there you are. Great. Excellent.
That's better, yeah.
Wonderful. Welcome, Cesar. And how about Sabina? How are you, Sabina? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm doing well.
Excellent. Wonderful. Hello, Beth. How are you?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Beth.
Good. Temitope, how are things in Nigeria? Oh, we can't hear you. Sorry. You're there. We can see you. You're smiling, but we can't hear you. Sorry. Try again. Teme? All right, that's right. We can't hear you, but we know you're there. See,
Okay.
you're alive and well. Sabina. Hello, Sabina.
Yes.
Hi, Sabina.
Hi.
Welcome. Faith. Hello, Faith. Sabina, your box is jumping around, so I forgot we were.
Hi, Sabina.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hello, Faith. Welcome. Hello, Andrew. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Bill.
Okay. Kiaminu.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
How are things
Thank
in,
you. How are you doing?
in Myanmar today? Everything good?
Yeah.
Kinkin. Hello, Kinkin.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hi, Kinkin. Good to
Hi,
see you.
Kinkin. Yep.
Excellent. And let's see. Inez or Zawadi. Hi,
Hello.
Zawadi. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good to see you. You look like you're in the dark. Robert. Oh, Robert's not here. Robert is, that's right, he's not here yet. Ngoza. Hello, Ngoza. Ngoza's here. And hello, Ngoza.
Hello, Ngoza.
Nice to hear your voice. And then finally, Damas. Hello, Damas. We hear you. Excellent. All right. Well, we've done the roll call. Everybody's here. And so I've made my announcement. So it is my turn to disappear and turn this over to Hugh.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, can I ask everybody just to make sure you turn off your microphones so that we don't get background noise? Okay. We have one microphone still on. Bazubagira. Can you turn off your microphone?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Okay. Now let's see what I'm going to do today. Oh, okay. First of all, let me just mention that you were given you were in at the end of the last what do you call it module. You were given an assignment which was the incorrect assignment. You've been given the corrected assignment now, and I think Bill has communicated with everybody saying, okay, sorry about that, but we will give you longer to answer that assignment. So I'm not going to focus on that now. I'm going to move forward, but please bear in mind that that assignment needs to be completed. Now, basically, we've done setup. We've done setup for the MIS administrator. We've done setup for the project administrator. We've done data entry. We've done reports. We've given basic grounding in reports. You will find that when it comes to reports, you will learn a lot more about reports just by playing with them. And I've given you access to the MIS that I use as a training tool, which is VSL Associates Tanzania Training Project. And I've even given you on the last assignment the credentials to get into that. So if you want to go in and play around with it and look at some reports, you can do that. I just ask that you don't change any of the data. Okay, so now that we've got the reports more or less, got some familiarity with the reports. At this point, I'm going back. I'm going back to setup, because what we did when we did setup is we did the very basic, simple setup using the standard data fields that are mandatory and that you must use if you want to enter data into the system. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at user-defined fields. Okay, now what I mean by user-defined fields is fields that are not standard. You don't have to have them. You don't have to have any at all if you don't want to. Okay, so what we're going to do is underscore to you that you don't have to have user-defined fields, and that if you do have user-defined fields, the golden rule, which I'm going to be going to stress a lot throughout this webinar, is use as a small number as user-defined fields as is really necessary for your program. Don't just go and grab all kinds of data that you really aren't sure you can analyze. But I'll be touching on that a bit more later. So let's actually talk about the different kinds of user-defined fields. There are basically two types. We have what we call standard data fields, and we have user-created fields. Now, these are both user-defined, so I'm going to go through each one in turn, and I'll give you a little chart here to show you how we look at it. So we have here user-defined fields. That's the category of, if you want to enter non-standard data, that's where you go. You go to the user-defined fields tab, and underneath that, you have two types of user-defined fields. You have standard data fields and user-created fields. So until now, we've only considered fixed data fields, which are mandatory, but user-defined fields are optional and are either selected or created by the MIS administrator, who either selects them from a pre-formatted standardized list or creates them from scratch and does the formatting. Now that's the key point here. These standard data fields, they are not mandatory, but they are already formatted. The titles are already there, and the formatting is already done. So all you have to do is click on it, and you have an additional data field that you may want to use. But you may find after you've looked at the list of standard data fields that the standard data fields don't cover what you need. So you're going to create your own user-created fields. So those are your two choices under user-defined fields. Now, user-defined fields, these can only be created by the MIS administrator or by a network administrator. Okay? And this is a very important point. They're not created by the project, okay? So you should know that UDFs, user-defined fields, they appear on the data entry screens of all the projects in an MIS, okay? So if I have 6 projects and in one MIS, and I create either a standard data field or a user-created field, it will show up in all projects in an MIS. So if your user-created fields don't apply to a number of projects, you probably ought to create a new MIS so that the user-created fields will be different in that MIS to the other MIS. But for the moment, let's just assume we're working with one MIS with several projects, and you should know that anything you create by the way of user-defined fields is going to show up in the data entry screens of all projects. Okay. Now, what shows up on the data entry screen? All right. We have user-defined fields. I talked to you about standard data fields and user-created fields. Okay. Now, what do we say about these? We say both types show up on a single screen for data entry. Okay. Classified as standard or user-created, which you see here. Okay. Standard, user-created. If the same standard data field is selected by both the MIS administrator and a network manager, it will only show up once on the UDF screen. Now, I haven't talked to you yet about networks, but I will talk to you about them in the next webinar. But the point about it is this. The MIS administrator can create user-defined fields, but if your MIS is also part of a network, and the network manager wants to ask you, also wants to create fields which are set at the network level, and they ask that they select the same standard data field, you don't have to worry. You don't have to answer the question twice. It will only show up once. Okay? All right. Now, standard data fields. Okay? What are they and how to set them up? Okay, now here I'm going to bore you a bit by just reading from text the next two slides. Okay, classes of standard data fields. Okay, now, a bit of history. Standard data fields were created after the Savix MIS had been running for a year. We already had user-created fields, but we didn't have standard data fields. Until that time, there were no standard data fields, but we reviewed the UDFs, the user-defined fields that users had created, and we found out which ones were more commonly used, okay, and decided that if we could make them available already pre-formatted, so you wouldn't have to worry about spelling mistakes or be uncertain about the best format, it could already be done and put in place for you. So once the most popular fields that have been created by the users were identified, we put them into 5 different categories, and here they are. Group details, things like the name of the chairperson, telephone number of the group, secretary's telephone number, share value, things like that. And then we had another category, which was age of members, which basically divides the group into different age categories. Then we had a category called education and training, certain kinds of standardized training like small enterprise training, small business training, gender training and the like. Then we had a category called income generating activities, where you could talk about things like, where you could select things like, for example, how many members of the group were involved in trading activities, how many members of the group were involved in service activities, how many members of the group were involved in manufacturing activities. And then we had a category called financial institution interactions, which basically means, does your group have a bank account? How far away is the bank? Have you received a loan from the bank? And so on and so on. So this enabled us to have these 5 categories, and you can go through those 5 categories and choose your standard data fields. Now, in each category, there are a number of data points that can be selected. Please review pages 5 and 6 of the attached Word manual entitled Savix MIS 2 Users Manual, Module 6, User-Defined Fields. Now, if you go to page 5 and 6, it will show you all, and that's, by the way, that is the Word document that is already showing as being downloadable under this module. And it goes through each of the 6 categories, and it shows you what you can have. And I'll just give you an example of what that's going to look like. Okay, hold on a second. Oh, no, hold on. I'm just going to back out of here, and I'm going to go to that document. Hold on a second. Let me see. I need to find it. Where are we? Where are we? I don't have the menu, Bill. Oh, yes, I do. I'm just going to resume share. Okay. Actually, okay. What's happening here? Oh. Sorry, I seem to have blown it a bit. Let me just go back to the PowerPoint. Oh, there we are, full screen. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to go through that in detail now, but you should know that we have created and posted for you a Word document on this particular webinar, on this particular module, and it does list all of the the standard defined fields. So let me go on to the next slide here and say, first of all, I want to give you some warnings, and this is important, okay? Okay, let me go. I think I went in the wrong direction there. Just a moment. Okay, here we go. Warnings. The first rule when selecting a user-defined field is to ask, what is really important for you to know? One of the problems that we have is that people very often say, oh, wouldn't that be nice to know? Oh, let's have that, because you can choose it. The standard defined fields are there. Why not click on it and let's have it? But you have to recognize that somebody's got to collect this data. So you better be sure that you really there's something important you really need to know, and that the data you're selecting will contribute to important learning. So the second rule, therefore, is to create the least number of standard defined fields to achieve this. And we say too many people just select a large number of SDFs, but they don't realize that you've got to collect the data. And who does that? It's going to be a field officer. But their job isn't to collect data. Their job is to train groups. So go easy on too many standard defined fields. So it's our belief that collecting a lot of unimportant data increases workload, and it reduces the possibility that you'll analyze it. You've got a lot of data, but suddenly you realize, oh my gosh, I have to analyze this to come up with meaningful results. So, and useful reports will be, you have to be sure that useful reports will be created. So if I'm crossing the road and when my life is at stake, I only ask two questions. Is there traffic coming from the left, or is there traffic coming from the right? I don't say, is it raining, or what's the color of the sky, or how many buses can I see? It's like, is there traffic to the left or right? The essential data. So please always bear that in mind. Thirdly, personally, I would never create more than 15 data points or fields combined across standard data fields and user-created fields, unless the MIS is a pure research project. So don't overdo it. You could select 60, but don't, okay? Try and restrict yourself to 15 or less, because that's possibly data that you can manage. Then therefore use the golden rule. Less is probably more. And in addition, I don't think you should collect user-defined field data more than once or at most twice a year, okay? You may collect the normal data when you make a visit every 3 months, but the additional data you're adding, the user-defined fields, probably don't collect that more than twice a year, so that you don't overburden the field officer and you can do a meaningful analysis. Therefore, and here's the key point, before the MIS administrator starts to pick and choose SDFs, you should sit down as a team and you have to think, what do I really must know, and what is the minimum data that I need to gather in order to get the information I want. Okay, so that's just a serious warning. I really wish you'd pay attention to it, because I do run into lots of programs where they select 30 or 40 data points, and after about a year, they abandon half of them because they're simply not making use of them. So think about it before running into the problem. Okay, now I talked to you about two types of user-defined fields. I said the standard data fields and the user-created fields. So we're going to start off with the standard data fields, how you select them. Now, first of all, remember I told you that the MIS administrator is the person who creates them, all right? So you sign on as the MIS administrator, and here I've signed on as SMDP Online 1. And I've gone to MIS configuration, this tab here, and then I've gone to group UDF, okay? So I go to sign on as MIS administrator, and I then click on MIS configuration, and then I go to group user-defined field. And if I do that, I'm going to see these two categories. We have user-created fields standard data fields. Okay, right. Now it's normal to start working with standard data fields before user-created fields. Okay. So you click first all on Manage Standard Data Fields. Here, it says Manage Standard Data Fields. Right. Once I do that and I click on Manage Standard Data Fields, I go into this screen here. Okay. Right. Now this is Managing Standard Data Fields, and you'll notice I've got these 4 categories here. All right. Categories of standard data fields. There are 5. Group details, age of members, education and training, income generating activities, and it's covered by the arrow, financial institution interactions. And by default, it goes to group details. And you can see here the beginning of a list for the group details. Okay, so let's say that, okay, so standard data fields, defaults to group details as a category, with a few metrics showing here. There are many more which you can select. Okay, so here you are, you're saying, right, I'm going in there, what do I want to select? So here, for example, I'm going in and I'm saying, I'm going to select name of community or village. Okay. Now, when I click on name of community or village, okay, when I click on it and I save it, it will go above to the, it will go to the top of the line, and there'll be a black line underneath indicating that the ones above the black line are selected. Okay. The MIS administrator then decides if this must be a mandatory field or not. And in this case, you can see here that they've clicked on mandatory field. So now this means if you don't enter this data, you cannot save your data set. Right? So now we've done that one, and the selection is then saved. Okay, good. Right, now I'm going on to looking at all the, so here we have the MIS administrator then selects chairperson's telephone number. Okay. The MIS administrator then clicks add to my list, but doesn't make it mandatory. He decides not to make it mandatory. And then the MIS administrator decides that they will select 2 other fields. These will be number of members who run an enterprise, and that will come under income generating activities. And Savings Group has an account at a partner financial service provider under the financial institution interactions tab. So we're going to have selected 3 metrics from group details, 1 from income generating activities, and 1 from financial institution interactions. Right, so now we've got our 4 rather, not 5. We've got our 4 metrics which have been selected. So here we have, the screen shows the final selection of 4 SDFs. Note that only the name of community village is mandatory, but unfortunately it's not clearly visible on the screen, but it is clear when you open it up on the MIS. And then once this selection is completed, the MIS administrator then starts to create user-created fields by clicking on Manage Categories. So right now we've finished selecting standard data fields, okay? Now what we have to do with user-created fields, you'll notice here, with the standard data fields, you have categories. So for example, we have 2 categories from group details. We have 1 category, income generating activities for this SDF, and we have 1 category for this SDF, which is in here, it's financial institution interactions. But obviously, if you're creating your own user-defined fields, you have to create your own categories. So that's what you start off doing. So user-created fields, what are they and how to set them up? Creating a user-created field category. Okay, right. While SDFs are already arranged in categories, when working with UCFs, these have to be created by the MIS admin. Now, I've already mentioned that. In the case of our example, the two fields we want to create are to represent vulnerability. Okay? Because we said the two things we wanted to do, well, we're going to create a vulnerability category. So let's do it. So here, okay, we click on manage. Let me go back so you're clear about it. You click on manage categories. And when you click on manage categories, it will take you into this. And it says new category. Okay, the screen is entitled manage user defined categories. The MIS admin types in vulnerability in the new category box, clicks on add, and then save. Okay, and that has created a category. You can create more categories if you have many user-defined fields. Okay. Next, creating a user-created field. We have a category, all right? So, click on Create User-Created Field. Okay. Let me just find where I am. Okay, so you're back now here. You haven't you've created a category, but you haven't created a user-created field. Right. So here, when you click on user-created field, the screen shows the field name. You've decided number of widows. Okay, these are vulnerable people. That's why this is in the vulnerability category. It will also ask you if you want to give a description. So here we are saying number of members who are widows. We're just clarifying that these are members of the group. Then we select the category, okay, which, by the way, these two are optional. If you don't have a category, this doesn't show up, and you don't have to have a description, but you must have the name of the field. And then you choose the data type, and in this case, we're saying number. Okay. All right. Now, data types are quite complicated. You can choose calendar, for example, if this was a date. If it was a percentage that you were looking for, you'd select percentage. And you can select, you can create a drop-down list. You can select number, which we've created here. We've selected radio button and multi-select text field. You have to play around with that. I don't want to go into exhaustive detail to see which one works for you. Okay. Now notice that only numbers, and here's a very important point, only numbers and percentage will show up on the trainer performance and trainer comparison reports. Okay. All other selections will only show up on group reports. So for example, if I said, instead of saying number of widows, if I said address, chairperson's address, obviously that would only apply to one group. So that's not going to show up on anything where there is an aggregation of groups. Sorry, I hear somebody. Is there a question? Okay, never mind. Right, so please notice that when it comes to the data type, number and percentage are the most commonly used because, so for example, if I say my group has 10, another group has 20 members, another group has 30 members, that means my total is 60. So that would certainly show up on the field officer's comparison. I have 60 members. But if I put addresses, obviously that would not show up on the field officer's list because I cannot aggregate and compare addresses. So be careful and recognize that number and percentages are the most useful on this system. Right. Now what we've done is we've selected those three, and now we have to decide, okay, we have to decide whether or not we need a decimal. So for example, if you're saying number of widows, you're not going to have a decimal because you're not going to have half of a widow or a quarter of a widow. You're only going to have whole numbers, so that's fine. Okay, you've decided that this is not mandatory, and you've decided no validation is needed. Now, it will also ask you if you want to keep the value of the previous data set in the field. So in other words, you've saved your data set and you open up your system again and you're going to enter new data. Do you want to have the old data showing or not? And we recommend by default that you do have it showing, because that means if it hasn't changed, you don't have to type it in again. Okay, right. Okay, formatting. Okay, finally now here, we've decided here, you'll notice here, that here we decided, okay, so then we decide, hold on a sec. The MIS, if the MIS admin decides that the screen should be mandatory, okay, and requires the entry of a value, that will show up in any previous data sets that did not include this field. Now let me explain this. Supposing you've been running your program for 6 months and you decide to create a user-created field, okay? But you've already got data, and that means that when you create that field, the old data will have blanks where this particular data should be. And that can confuse the system. So you simply say, all previous data sets, put in a 0. Okay, but if you're creating it from the beginning, you don't have to, because there are no previous data sets. Right, so the final appearance of the user-created field table is this. Number of female-headed households, number of widows. These are my user-created fields, and this is the name of the, these are the names. So here we have, this summary shows the selections made for both user-created fields and standard data fields, and they will show up in all projects, okay? Now, here I'm going to show you what that looks like. So now I've shown you how to set it up. But supposing now you are entering data, okay? So here we have the data entry screen. And you see at the top, we have static data, we have cycle data, we have data set, and then suddenly we have a new tab which appears, which is user-defined field. Okay? And then we have user-created fields here and standard data fields here. So under vulnerability, we have the 2 user-created fields, and with the standard data fields, we have name of community, chairperson's telephone number, income-generating activities, number of members who run an enterprise, and financial institution interactions. Does the savings group have an account at a partner FSP? And the answer is no. So here you see now we have entered, we are showing how the data is entered in the fields. Okay? Right. So the data entry tab appears automatically. When clicked, both the UDFs and the SDFs appear. And here's an important point, when the same SDF is chosen by the MIS administrator and also by the network administrator, it will only show up once. So for example, if the network administrator had selected number of widows, it wouldn't show up twice, it would only show up once, but the information would go to the MIS administrator and also to the network administrator. Okay, user-defined fields. How do they appear in reports? Reports in which they show up. User-defined fields do not show up in the project performance report, benchmark report, or trends report at any level. These are, as I called them before, big bosses reports, and they don't show things which relate to the performance of individual field officers. All user-defined fields show up in group comparison reports, okay, and are specific to a single group. Only numerical and percentage values show up in trainer comparison reports, since only numerical values can be aggregated and compared. So let's move on to trainer comparison report. As I said, user-defined fields do not show up in the project performance report. They show up in the group comparison. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. I think, here we are, okay. So, here, for example, this screen shows a full set of standard, sorry, that isn't SCFs, that should be SDFs, collected for a group. Only the last two will produce a result. So the name of the village won't produce a result in a trainer comparison report, nor the parish, nor the sub-county, nor the district, nor the group telephone number. But the share value will, and the loan interest rate will, because these are numerical and these are percentages. This is not numerical, group telephone number, it is text. All other fields are non-numerical and they will not show up in the trainer comparison report. Okay, so here's an example here. This is the trainer comparison report. So here we have selected number of groups. And down below, we selected two SCFs, the loan interest rate and share value. Okay, so here, because I am now created, now I can run this report, and this is where I get those results. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to very quickly actually go ahead and do it so that you can actually see on the screen what it looks like. Let me go to, here we are. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in to my MIS. It is SMDP online 1, select it, and then I'm going to do SMDP online 1 at gmail.com, and my password is UNH online1. So now I'm going in as the MIS administrator. Okay, I want to create my user-defined fields. I go to MIS configuration, and here I go to manage standard data fields. I select here name of community or village, and I think I have chairperson's telephone number. Okay, I've done that, and I'm saving in. Then I go back again to manage categories. Wrong place. Let me cancel that. I go to manage standard data fields, and I go to income generating activities, number of members who run an enterprise. That's my list. Save. Okay, then I go back again to manage standard data fields, and I'm going to select financial institution interactions, and I'm going to savings group has an accountant partner, financial service provider. Okay, add to my list. So, right, now if I go back now, I've got those 4 up here, they're ready. Now if I go to my user created field, I'm going to manage my categories, and I'm going to write vulnerability. Whoops, better spell it properly. Otherwise people will think I'm an illiterate Englishman. I click add, and then I save. Okay, now I go back here and I say create user created fields. Right, now I have 2 user created fields I want to create. Okay, and that is going to be number of widows. Description, it is number of members who are widows. I can add something there if I want to. Female members. My category is vulnerability because I've only got 1. I'm going to select number. I'm going to leave all of these. I'm not going to make this mandatory, and I'm going to save it, right? So I've got 1. Now I have to do, I'm going to add another one, which is create user created field. and that is going to be number of female, oops, that's no good, female headed, number of female headed households, and I'm going to make that number of members who are female heads of household. Category is vulnerability. That's fine. Data type is number. I'm not going to change anything there, and I'm going to keep the data in the field, so I'm going to save it. Right, there we are. That's it. Now, I've now created my user-created fields. Now, I'm actually the MIS administrator, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in. Can everybody see this, by the way? But Bill, can everybody see this? Because
yes, I can see it.
Yes.
People are seeing it.
Okay, good. So I'm going to log out now, and I'm going to log back in now as project administrator. Okay, so I just do. I think we had admin 1, 2, and I had SMDP line 1. Right, there it is. Sign in. Right, now, I now look at, I now go to my data entry screen, and I go to a group like Umoja, for example, and I view my data sets, and I click on it, and when I do that and click edit, you will now notice we have an additional tab. We had the main data set, now we have those user-defined fields, so there they are, already there for you. So it's actually, although I know my PowerPoint is a long and complicated PowerPoint, it's actually quite a simple process. It really isn't that complicated. So if you follow through on the video after the webinar, this will certainly show you how. So the last thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to log out, and I'm going to go back into my own MIS, which has already got some of these data in it, not much, mind you. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is VSL Associates Tanzania, admin 1, 121212. This is the one I'm giving you for the last assignment. And I go now to, my data entry, go to Umoja 1, view data sets. See, I've got a lot of data sets here. Pardon me. And I'm going to edit. And here's my UDFs with the data in it. Okay. Now you'll notice some is in there and some is not. I've got a whole load of UDFs. I've got group quality, gender, age, my standard data fields. I've got group details, income generating activities, financial institution interactions, and some of the data is partially filled in. So this is, I don't actually recommend that you start using standard data fields and user-defined fields until you've had a good, solid discussion about what you really need, and then you create them. Now, a promise to all of you, if you get to the point of wanting to set up data fields for an actual project, you get in touch with me, I can go through it with you on Skype. I've made this offer several times before your assignment, and so far, you've been very kind to me because you haven't actually contacted me, so I've been able to have an extra cup of coffee. But I think if you want to work your way through this, then you might want to be helped as you do it. And when you look at today's assignment is very simple. It's not this assignment for the next week. It's very simple. It is to do exactly what I've just done, and I've given you the case. So it's not the case study. The assignment. It wants you to go into your own MIS, the one that you've already created. And we want you to create the user-defined fields exactly according to the rubric on the what do you call it, the assignment. Okay, that was quick. A lot of work. So we have a few minutes for discussion and questions. Thanks. Any questions, anybody? Or have I stunned you all into silence? Let me have a look in the chat screen. Okay. Okay, question. What is your explanation on determining a field to be optional or mandatory? Well, to be quite honest, in most cases, I think fields should be mandatory, because if they're not mandatory, and that means people don't have to collect data, then of course your statistics aren't very meaningful. But there are some cases where the data is optional, and let me explain. Suppose, for example, you say groups have reached phase 2, okay, in their training cycle. Okay, and you, instead of putting yes or no, you have a code which is 1 to indicate that they have reached the end of the cycle. Well, if they have, they're in second cycle. Well, if they haven't, you wouldn't put anything in, so it's optional. It could also be, let's take chairperson's telephone number. It could be the chairperson, not all chairpersons have a telephone number, so you might say that's optional. But you certainly wouldn't say, for example, that the location, the village in which the group is located, is optional. So the golden rule here is in my opinion, this is only my opinion, all user-defined fields should be optional unless there is a possibility that the data is not going to be available. Okay. Now let's see what the second question is. If, for example, someone hasn't entered a number of widows, and if you make it mandatory, the data entry person will not be able to save the data. Not quite, actually, Andrew, because you could say 0. If there are no widows, the number is 0, so that's actually quite straight.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's the only question I see so far. Let's see. Okay. Is a network manager different from MIS administrator? Yes, let me explain about networks. We haven't got there yet because it's something a bit complicated, but I'll give you an example. Let's say, okay, there was a program in Africa called Banking on Change run by Barclays Bank, and they worked through care and plan in Egypt, Tanzania, I believe in Kenya too, and one other country. I'm not sure where it was. You know, I think that's right. Tanzania, Kenya, and Egypt. But Barclays Bank needed to know what was going on everywhere. So what they did is they created a network. And a network is simply the network manager sends out an invitation to individual projects, not to MIS projects. And the project administrators either accept or reject the information. But once they've accepted it, the results from all of those projects go to the network manager. And to create a network, you have to go through VSL Associates because it's independent of a program. It's not part of an MIS at all. So we want to avoid the risk that people are going to try and sell whiskey to groups and create a network to sell cheap whiskey. They can sell it to me if they like, but I don't want them running around doing bad things. So it could be misused by people whose interests are commercial. So we have to screen them and agree that they can have a network. Once they've got it, it's independently managed. Okay. Right. Okay. I think that's answered the questions in the list. Any questions anybody want to ask verbally?
If there aren't any questions, Hugh, would it be worthwhile to go back to the assignment, the one that you corrected, just to make sure everyone's clear on it?
Oh, okay, fair enough. I need to dig in and find it. Just a minute.
Just
I'm going into Dropbox and I'm going to look it up, and then we'll get it. Okay, module 5, assignment. This was project administrator level project management, I think, right? Yeah, that's right. Okay. I'm just getting it to show. I hope I've selected the right one. Yes, I have. Okay. Now.
so we don't see your screen quite yet.
I know you don't. I'm just going to pull it up. Okay, so share screen. Where did I put it? Dropbox module 5 launching. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Right, okay. So can you see the assignment?
Not yet, no.
Okay, you can just see my screen. Okay, I
just see the list of files at this
It's
point.
a bit confusing. Just a minute. I need to go back to stop sharing the screen. And I need to resume share screen. And I think I should have that up as a doc. Here it is. Yeah, okay. Right. Now, assignment 5. I'm asking you to create operational reports, okay? Trainer comparison report, which is this one here, okay? Then a group comparison report, which is this one here, okay? And a group performance report here, this one here. So you're going to go in under VSL Associates Tanzania Training Project. I've given you the credentials here. And I want you to log on as project administrator and with the project administrator password, okay? And then I want you to follow the instructions and create and analyze a trainer comparison report, okay? And then I want you to create and analyze a group comparison report, create and analyze a group performance report. This is a tough exercise. It's not easy, and it's going to take quite a bit of time for you to do it. But to me, it's actually one of the most important reports, one of the most important exercises, because it gets you to look at the data critically and to try and analyze it in a way that is useful for your programs. And I focused on operational reports because that's what your project administrators are going to be doing. They're going to be managing projects, so how to do it better, okay? So you can... So I want you basically to read this really carefully, spend time on it. I know we've given you an extension on this. Bill, what is the deadline on this one now?
Well, to be honest, I'm making the deadline for all assignments December 7th, because people who are behind are going to need to catch up. And if I don't make it December 7th, then they won't be able to. So I would say, you know, we want you to do this as quickly as possible, and by the end of the week would be great.
Right. Okay. Well, good luck on that one. Anyway, here it's called assignment 4 because it's the 4th assignment you've done, and we apologise for actually not having put this one up when we should have. But now it's up there. You've got until December the 7th to complete it. All right. But please don't leave it to the last minute.
And you want, in order to document this, you want them to create a Word document to record their answers.
Yes.
And then upload this. Okay.
Yes, I haven't actually specified this here, but that's exactly correct. Maybe, Bill, you could add that.
I did add that. It's when they look at it, that's what they see.
Okay, that's great. Okay. So this is the exercise. I mean, I think project management reports are very straightforward because all you really do is print them. There's no selecting, there's no analyzing, there's no real comparison. But you know, the operational reports are really, really important. Okay. Now, the other thing is that this report is focused at the project level, so it's not the MIS level. We're not comparing projects. We are comparing So, for example, if you're at the MIS level, you wouldn't have project management reports, you'd have compare management reports, okay, compare projects. But at the project level, this is what you're going to get, okay? To be honest with you, there is a huge amount of stuff to get through. And a 1 hour seminar once a week isn't really sufficient. We normally run a 1 week workshop on all this, and we go into a lot of detail. There's a whole bunch of stuff I'm not covering right now, because to do so would be just overloading you with a lot of information, and I would be doing too much talking. But any clarifications you need, you'll get. One thing that we're going to post this week, I'm not sure when you're going to do it, Bill, but one thing we're going to post is we've been giving you bits and pieces of the training guide, okay? Just bits and pieces. What we're posting to Module 6, hopefully today or tomorrow, I'm not sure when you'll do it, Bill, is the complete manual from top to bottom. It's like 112 pages. So it's the whole thing from top to bottom, and you can dig into bits and pieces of it to get some clarification. And it gives you a lot more detail than I can do in the short time of a webinar.
I'll send out a message to everybody that will let them know that that link is up. So, Hugh, what I want to do right now is just kind of recap what I said in the very beginning about kind of the final work that needs to be done. So yesterday I sent out an email that was incorrect. I said that there would be no discussion and no assignment for Module 6, and that is not correct. There will be an assignment. It will be posted later this week, and there will be a discussion, and that will also be posted later this week. And there will be a final webinar, which I did say there would be on next Tuesday, the 27th, the usual time. That'll be our official webinar. I think what I'll do is put on my camera here so you can see me. That'll be our official final webinar of the course, and then, as I said, we will have a graduation webinar sometime before Christmas, probably the week of let me see, December 10th through the 14th. So Hugh and I will decide when that is. In the meantime, I'm preaching to the choir here because you're all here, but we only had about half the students show up today. So I'll go and give a finger wagging to the people that aren't here. You're now watching this, hopefully, and you should have been here, but that's okay. As long as you watch this, that's important. Please go back, everybody, and look at all of your assignments for all of the modules. We do have people starting back on Module 2 all the way up to Module 5 where you haven't posted to discussions, or you haven't documented your attendance at webinars, or you haven't done the assignments. And as I said, we are giving you till December 7th to finish up everything. December 7th, it automatically shuts down so that by December 8th, you won't have access anymore. And then that is when the grading period ends, and that's where we will determine whether you've made the 65% to be considered a graduate of this online course. And I also mentioned we're going to give you lots of evaluation materials. We want to get feedback from you, and we also want to check in with how you've done. So please pay attention to all that. And finally, this is the time to ask any questions. When I said this is the time, meaning the next 2 weeks, anything that doesn't make sense to you, anything that's not working for you, this is really when you should be checking in with Hugh and Andrew to make sure you can get some one-on-one time with them and walk you through things so you make sure that you really have a full understanding of how the Savix MIS works, and you can use it and not have to be worrying about functionality because you didn't really understand a particular component. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate everyone's attention today, and really appreciate seeing your faces in the very beginning. I think that's a great thing to do. So please plan to show up next Tuesday at the usual time, and we'll have our final webinar, and we look forward to you catching up on everything and letting us know if you need any help. That's what we're here for. Everyone have a great day, and we will talk to you in a week. Any last words, Hugh?
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Or Andrew? Any last words, Andrew?
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All the best, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep cool.
Thank
See
you.
you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ending the broadcast.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.